Maurice finally having a real storyline on the show feels important because it confirms something viewers have been noticing for years. This situation did not suddenly appear. It did not start overnight. What we are seeing now is the result of long-standing patterns finally being shown clearly instead of being brushed aside. For a long time, Maurice stayed in the background while other people carried the drama. Now that the focus is on him, it reveals a lot about how he thinks, how he communicates, and how he handles his marriage. One of the first moments that stands out is the way Maurice talks about Monster. He says that Monster wants to be like Jalen, but does not want to put in the work. On the surface, it sounds like a simple observation, but when someone keeps pointing out effort and motivation in others, it often reflects something deeper. Maurice speaks in a way that shows how much he values effort, yet his tone also suggests judgment. It raises the question of whether he is projecting his own struggles onto someone else. Instead of guiding or understanding, his words feel more like criticism. Maurice then shifts the conversation to counseling. He admits that he did not really want to go because he feels like not everyone has all the answers. That statement is very telling. Counseling is not about someone having all the answers. It is about listening, learning, and understanding. It is about being uncomfortable and still staying present. Maurice's resistance suggests that the real issue is not the counselor, but his discomfort with being challenged. Kimmy's reaction makes it clear that this is not new. From the very beginning of their relationship on the show, her main concern has been that Maurice does not listen to her. This complaint has come up season after season. At this point, it becomes hard to ignore. Either nothing has changed over the years, or the problem has been ignored for so long that it became normal. Neither option reflects growth. When Maurice says that he can grow from listening to someone else, but not from listening to Kimmy, that moment says everything. It shows that he values outside voices more than his wife's voice. Kimmy is the one living in the relationship with him. She is the one expressing her feelings directly, yet her words only seem to matter when someone else repeats them. This creates an unhealthy power dynamic where Kimmy's emotions are not treated as valid on their own. This behavior is not growth, it is avoidance. It is a way of delaying responsibility by pretending to be open while still refusing to truly listen. Maurice hears Kimmy, but he does not accept what she is saying. He waits for confirmation from someone else before taking her seriously. That leaves Kimmy feeling unseen and unheard, no matter how many times she explains herself. At the same time, other issues are unfolding around them. Nell is trying to understand why Tisha is upset with her. Fletcher explains it very clearly. Tisha does not want to talk about social media issues on camera. Nell keeps pushing those topics anyway. The NDA, the interviews, and online rumors are exactly what Tisha wants to avoid. The boundary was made clear, but Nell refuses to respect it. Whether people agree with Tisha or not, the boundary still matters. When someone says they are not comfortable discussing something, continuing to push only creates more tension. That is why the situation keeps escalating. It is not about one conversation. It is about repeated disrespect for boundaries. Nell then claims that she warned Destiny that Tisha should leave her alone, or she would reveal what she knows about Tisha's marriage. This moment feels less real and more like a threat without substance. If there were real facts, they would be presented clearly. Instead, it comes across as vague talk meant to keep attention. This pattern weakens credibility and makes the situation feel forced. The same pattern shows up again with Maurice. The Scott brothers have never been known for embracing counseling, so seeing Maurice suddenly speak about growth and openness raises questions. When behavior changes quickly on reality TV, it is often because of pressure, not deep reflection. Growth takes time. It does not happen just because cameras are present. The marriage Menders exercise brings everything into focus. Maurice and Kimmy are asked to talk about what they are willing to give up. Kimmy clearly explains her needs. She wants time. She wants attention. She wants connection outside of the bedroom. These are simple requests. They are not confusing or unrealistic. Maurice responds by turning everything back to sex. He suggests that spending time together should lead to more physical intimacy. This shows that he is still not listening. Kimmy is not asking for a trade. She is asking for emotional closeness without it always leading somewhere else. She wants to feel valued for more than physical access. Kimmy explains that quality time means talking, walking, sitting together, and being present. She is asking for emotional intimacy. Maurice keeps translating her words into physical needs. This is why they keep missing each other. He does not see that intimacy and sex are not the same thing. When the counselor explains Kimmy's need for time, Maurice immediately shuts it down. That response speaks louder than words. It shows resistance, not understanding. Kimmy even tries to explain that spending less time focused on sex could improve their connection overall. Her honesty creates an uncomfortable silence because it challenges Maurice's expectations. When Maurice makes comments about physical endurance, Kimmy's reaction shows confusion and discomfort. It feels like they are speaking two different languages. Maurice seems to live in a reality where constant physical access equals closeness. Kimmy is trying to explain that emotional connection matters just as much, if not more. This pattern is not new. Flashbacks show the same issue coming up again and again. Maurice expects constant physical attention and does not understand why it's exhausting. Kimmy has been carrying this burden quietly for a long time. The counselor then explains something important about self-soothing. Maurice opens up about his childhood. He talks about food being locked away and the shame he felt. He explains how he learned to cope in other ways. These experiences shaped his behavior as an adult. Kimmy already understands his past. She has empathy for it. But understanding the reason does not mean accepting the behavior forever. Trauma explains behavior, but it does not excuse refusing to change. Maurice says he will do better, but promises alone are not enough. History shows that this conversation has happened before. Past statements Maurice has made about his behavior add more context. It begins to feel like marriage became a place of comfort and access instead of partnership. Kimmy may have been seen as someone who would always be available, but now she is tired. She is tired of not being heard. She is tired of repeating herself. She is tired of being reduced to one role. This storyline matters because it is not about growth yet. It is about exposure. It is about patterns being named. Maurice has been showing who he is for years. Now the audience is seeing it clearly. Whether he truly changes remains to be seen. But what is clear is that Kimmy has been carrying this weight for a long time. When someone tells you who they are, you should listen. Maurice has been telling his story all along. Now it's just louder. What also stands out in this entire situation is how often Maurice speaks around Kimmy instead of to her. Even when he is sitting right next to her, his words feel like they are aimed at someone else. He talks as if the real audience he wants approval from is not his wife, but whoever is watching. That dynamic has been present for a long time, and once you see it, it becomes hard to ignore. Kimmy is not confused about what she needs. She has been clear for years. The problem is that clarity does not matter if the person hearing it has already decided what they want the conversation to mean. Maurice often reframes Kimmy's words into something more comfortable for himself. When she asks for time, he hears restriction. When she asks for emotional closeness, he hears rejection. And instead of sitting with that discomfort, he redirects the conversation back to what makes him feel safe and validated. That pattern is not accidental. It is learned behavior. It is how he has protected himself for a long time. But protection for one person can feel like neglect to another, and that is where the real damage happens. Kimmy's frustration does not come from a lack of love. It comes from carrying the same emotional weight over and over without relief. Anyone who has watched Trey since her first season can see how patient she has been. She has tried calm conversations. She has tried explaining things gently. She has tried meeting him halfway. But when halfway still feels like she is doing most of the emotional labor, patience turns into exhaustion, and exhaustion changes how people show up in a marriage. There is also something important to notice about how Maurice talks about growth. He says he wants to grow, but growth on his terms. He is open to listening, but only when the voice does not challenge his comfort too much. That is why outside validation feels safer to him than his wife's perspective. A counselor feels neutral. Kimmy feels personal. And personal feedback is harder to accept because it requires accountability. It requires change that cannot be avoided once the cameras are gone. When Maurice says he cannot grow from listening to Kimmy, that moment should not be brushed off. That is not a small statement. That is a clear window into how he views her role in his life. She is his partner, but not his guide. She is expected to adapt, but not to lead. And that imbalance has consequences. Over time, it sends a message that her feelings are optional, not essential. The marriage Menders exercise only made that imbalance more visible. Kimmy's request was basic: time, attention, connection. These are not luxury items in a marriage. They are the foundation. She was not asking for grand gestures or unrealistic promises. She was asking for presence. Maurice's response showed that he still sees connection as a transaction. If I give this, I get that. That mindset turns intimacy into currency instead of closeness. When the counselor stepped in and tried to slow the conversation down, Maurice's resistance became even clearer. His immediate shutdown when time was mentioned revealed more than any confession could. It showed that the idea of slowing down makes him uncomfortable. It takes away the one area where he feels in control. And when control feels threatened, defensiveness shows up quickly. Kimmy, on the other hand, was trying to explain something very simple. Emotional connection fuels physical connection, not the other way around. Without feeling seen and heard, physical intimacy becomes draining instead of fulfilling. That is not a radical idea. It is something many people understand. But understanding requires listening, and listening requires letting go of assumptions. Maurice was not ready to do that in that moment. The moment about frequency was especially telling. 2 or 3 times a day was said so casually, yet the reaction in the room said everything. That statement did not land as confidence, it landed as disconnect. Kimmy's expression was not playful, it was confused. It was a look of someone realizing once again that they are not on the same page, and maybe they never have been. Flashbacks only confirmed what longtime viewers already knew. This conversation is not new. It is a repeat. Different setting, same issue. Every trip, every discussion, every attempt to reset ends up circling back to the same unmet need. When patterns repeat this consistently, they stop being problems and start being truths. The conversation about Maurice's childhood adds context, but context is not a free pass. Trauma explains behavior, but it does not justify staying the same forever. Kimmy has acknowledged his past. She has shown understanding, but understanding without change becomes another burden. At some point, empathy turns into self-neglect if it is not met with effort. Maurice's admission about self-soothing was honest, and honesty is important, but honesty is only the first step. Awareness without action does not lead to growth. It leads to repetition, and repetition is exactly what Kimmy is tired of. She is not asking him to erase his past. She is asking him not to let it run their future. Looking back at Maurice's past comments about relationships and behavior only adds more layers to the story. It paints a picture of someone who has always separated physical access from emotional responsibility. Marriage, in that context, becomes a place of availability, not partnership. And when that belief goes unchecked, it creates resentment on both sides. Kimmy's fatigue is not sudden, it is built over time. Years of explaining, years of waiting, years of hoping that this conversation would finally be the one that lands. And now, instead of trying to soften her words, she is stating them plainly. That shift alone shows how close she is to her limit. What makes this storyline important is not whether Maurice changes tomorrow, it's that the pattern is finally being named. It is no longer hidden behind jokes or surface-level scenes. It is being spoken out loud, and once something is named, it cannot be unseen. This moment is not about redemption yet. It's about recognition. Recognition of imbalance, recognition of exhaustion, recognition of a marriage that has been operating on uneven ground for a long time. Whether Maurice chooses to do the work remains to be seen, but what is clear is that Kimmy has been carrying this weight quietly for years, and now the audience sees it too. When people show you who they are consistently, that is the truth. Maurice has been telling his story for a long time through his actions and his words. The difference now is that the cameras are no longer cutting away, And that is why this storyline matters. It connects the past to the present and explains so much of what viewers have been sensing all along.